Welcome to Built with Purpose. I am Chris Fay, and this is the show where vision meets execution and leadership leaves a legacy. From design studios to innovation hubs and product lines to skylines, we meet the people building more than great companies. They're creating culture, driving impact, and shaping what's next. These are the stories and strategies behind how the world gets built with purpose. All right, everybody, thank you for joining Built with Purpose. I'm Chris Fay, your host. I am fired up to have my man, Petrangeli, on with me today. We were just joking around about how to pronounce his last name, and all the years that I've known him, I've gotten a schooling in it. So, Al, welcome to the show, man. I'm fired up that you're here, dude. I'm excited to spend some time with you today.
Yeah, Chris, it's great to be here, and thanks so much for just even considering me to come on your podcast and have the discussion.
Yeah, well, it's been awesome. I mean, we've known each other for a couple of years now, and I think that one of the things that you and I feel like we have a lot in common, and I want to kind of dive into that a little bit in the show of just like that like energy and excitement and like trying to like just really drive things forward. And so I've always enjoyed getting to know you, man. So I'm glad we could take some time. And so today, man, we're just going to have some quick conversations. We'll see where the dialogue goes. I want to kind of start with the quick icebreaker, Al. And so, a couple things. Quick question. Did you have a nickname growing up?
Not really. I mean, some people call me Bert, short for Albert, just okay. Bert. Didn't really have a nickname. People had enough trouble with my last name. They figured a nickname probably wouldn't be good.
I figured with your last name meaning Rock Angel, they would be something cool. Like they could call you the Rock or call you Angel or, you know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Never really had a nickname. Thank God.
And then what? And obviously, I'll introduce you here in just a sec. But if you could do anything other than what you're doing today as a career or as a job, kind of in hindsight, like what would that have been?
Man, I'll tell you, there's a couple different paths I could go down. First of all, I love being around people, and construction is such a people business, and I love teaching. So I would say that I could have very easily, at some point in my career, pivoted to teaching. And then the other piece is I'm pretty competitive. I love NASCAR, and I used to race street stocks down in Florida, where I spent most of my career, Fridays and Saturday nights. So I would like to think that I would be good enough to be a driver, but I would settle for being on a crew, and just traveling. I have an engineering background, so just the whole mechanics of how to make a car go fast is not just the engine and the driver, it's the setup of the car. There's a lot of geometry involved. And I would say probably within NASCAR or teaching somewhere.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've worked with a number of the NASCAR teams in the past. And so I've been able to go to like sit in the pits and like watch the teams work. And dude, it is so cool, man.
Yeah, it's choreographed. Yeah. And if today, a lot of those pit crew members are ex-college, or professional athletes. They've gone from, the guys that used to turn wrenches that also pitted to, they've got training programs and everything else that they go through because you can win a race in the pits or lose a race.
Yeah, there was a guy, I think he used to play baseball at Duke, and he didn't make it to the majors, and so he got recruited by one of the NASCAR teams, and it was awesome, man. Yeah, it was all like competitive former college athletes and pro athletes out there. It was amazing, man. Well, I know. So I want to kind of start with a little bit of history of you. I mean, obviously, currently Chief Operating Officer at Carroll Daniel. You've been CEO and have led through some large corporate organizations. And so, give me just like the high level history of you, Al, and like where you've been and what you're doing today.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I first of all, I couldn't have scripted. I'm 46 years now into my career, and I'll be semi-retiring at the end of this year. And I couldn't have scripted the finish of my career any better. I mean, if somebody told me to write a book on my life and how kind of my career would end, and it was written 15 years ago, I couldn't have crafted it the way it's really landing, right? So, to go back, so I grew up in the Northeast, Italian family. My grandfather had a restaurant business, and I grew up in the restaurant business. And anybody that's been in a restaurant business is very much a people business. And I saw my dad operate in that business and his brothers and sister. And, your success was really around your clientele and how well the clientele wanted to come back. So I learned at a very young age that how you treat people and is very important. And, from there I went on and my sister married a guy that, my brother-in-law, Frank, that, he built houses for a period of time and then went into commercial construction, went to school and went to commercial construction. And when I was growing up, I played football and I wrestled, right? So, through high school, I graduated mid 70s and college wasn't a big top of mind topic in my household. And I graduated and I applied to school for economics. And one day I woke up and I'm like, I am not an economics guy, right? I can't sit behind a desk. So, and
people person to all of a sudden economics major. I wouldn't lie.
So I was, at the time I was framing houses and I'm like, I want to go do what my brother-in-law does, So I went to school, small school in Chestnut Hill in Philadelphia called Spring Garden College. And while I was there, I interned with a national construction company that actually was Northeast company. And so I got a taste of commercial contracting, came out of there, graduated from there, 4-year degree, and I moved to South Florida with a company by the name of Whiting Turner, which is a national company. They hired me out of college, and that was probably a big pivotal move for me because the guy that ran the office for Whiting Turner 2 years later left and went to a company that ultimately became Balfour Beatty. He took me with him as a project engineer, and in 1983 I started with the business that was an acquired business of Syntex, and then Syntex became an acquired business of Balfour Beatty. And I started as a project engineer, and I just love building. I love building. I love the people dynamics of building, and I was extremely fortunate in my career to have a lot of the good and bad of leadership experiences, right? And I was smart enough to be able to watch things that went well for those that really perform well in construction, and then watch what was going on with things that people that struggled, right? And I have a lot of examples of people that are 10 times smarter than me, but they hit a ceiling because they didn't have that behavioral side of leadership that enabled them to move on. They were great technically, smart builders, but man, they were just terrible with clients and subcontractors and even some of the employees. So through my career, I saw some of that growing up, and I'm like, what's my leadership style, right? What do I want to be known for, and how do I want to, kind of master this construction industry? And I found out very early that it was all through how well you enabled others to be successful, and you had to figure that out, right? You had to get on board and figure that out. So fast forward, the company that let's call it Syntex Construction at this point in time did a lot of work at Walt Disney World, and I built, through my career, I built some pretty complicated jobs. So the business asked me to move to Orlando from South Florida and work on what at the time was the Grand Floridian. And if anybody's been to Disney, Grand Floridian is probably one of the most established hotels that they've got. And so I started my career building for Disney. And I got a little bit of a reputation within Disney to be a guy that they would want on their jobs as a project manager and stuff. So anyway, so that, after that I became a division manager. I moved around a little bit with the business. I spent some of my career in St. Croix. I spent some of my career in New Orleans. When the business asked me to move, I raised my hand and I said, where? I didn't ask questions about what are you going to do for me, or let me figure out how things are going to happen in life and all that. I pretty much stepped forward and went and did. So I had the ability to really witness, people that did it well and people that didn't do it well. And as I was saying earlier, that there's a lot of technical people that were extremely smart, right? And they ended up hitting a ceiling, and I could see it. And the behavioral side is really the long pole in the tent. And So growing up through my career, I just was smart enough to witness the things that worked well and absorb the things that didn't, but didn't use them.
Do you
And
think that's, I mean, kind of thinking about, because you rose into leadership and you've been at this executive level for some time. Like, do you think that that's like is that the thing? Like, what's the thing that helped you kind of elevate, and then kind of talk me
it's
through?
first and foremost, you need to be, what I would consider the best at what you do to accelerate at the pace that I was accelerating. And I'm not saying I was the best at what I was, but obviously people were seeing things in me they didn't see in others,
Mhm.
and I had opportunities that others weren't afforded. And what I mean by that is, if I've got a phone, if somebody said, "Hey, we want you to go run this job," and it's in St. Croix, which it was, I didn't go in and say, "Well, what does this mean for me?" Or, my next question was, "When do you need me there?" And I had enough faith in the leadership and in myself that we'll figure out the details. But if you're asking me to go and you want me to go do it, I'm going to go.
Mhm.
And as a result of that, I was put on some of the more unique opportunities, and I continued to prove myself at a younger age. And I moved into the president role of the Florida business for Syntex when I was 40 years old, and I was running a division of Syntex, a business unit within that Florida business when I was 36 years old.
Mhm.
So, I would. It's the people side of that, right? It's how do you get the best out of people? How do you enable people? And probably the easiest term I can use is servant leadership. How do you push servant leadership into your style? And to me, it means if the trash needs to be taken out, you take the trash out, right?
Mhm.
If somebody needs help, regardless of their position in the business, you kind of stop what you're doing and you go help. And how do you help others and enable others to be the best of themselves, in a non-threatening way? And people are going to make mistakes along the way.
Mhm.
So I would point to those pieces of my leadership style that helped me at a young age become president of the business. And I knew the business well. I mean, I studied the business. I studied the mechanics of the business, the financials, and business development and operations and all of that. This wasn't purely, you know, I just elevated myself through the business, or the business pushed me through the business because I was just a good guy. I had to know how to build a building real well, and I had to know how to run a business somewhat to give me the opportunity. And then after that, up to me to either succeed or fail.
And did you have, I mean, kind of coming along the way, I mean, were there people either in the business or outside of the business that influenced you and just said, "Hey, Al, like if you want to really grow in this company, you got to take advantage of opportunities. Like you got to be the guy." Like were there was that just kind of wired in you? Because when you were going back earlier and you were talking about your experience in the restaurant industry, the first thing that came to mind, at least that I've witnessed with you, is just general like work ethic, and I've kind
Yeah.
of witnessed your leadership style. But you kind of reference the people side of the restaurant thing, which makes complete sense. But like, did you have somebody like pushing you and guiding you in those directions, or do you think it was just like the way that you were wired?
A lot of it's the way that I'm wired. I've got a motto that says failure is not an option. And, you know, I may not be the smartest person, but nobody's going to outwork me. And that's not a badge that I wear. It's a mindset that I've got.
Yep.
And I would do whatever was necessary to get things done. And if that was something that I had to do for me, or something I had to help somebody else do to be successful, or go visit a job that's struggling and help them put a plan together to complete the job, even though I was the president of the company and I wasn't the guy running the job, I would come alongside the guy and say, "Hey, let me tell you what I see. Here's what I think you ought to do. What subs are you having difficulties with? Let me go manage these subs, help you manage these subs to get some of this pressure off of you, so you have some breathing room to go chase some of these items down." I didn't come in and pile a bunch of things on his shoulders and say, "Hey, I just make your cart heavier."
Yep.
And now not only do you need to go run the race, but you got to run it faster. That doesn't help anybody,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's what can I do to lighten your load? How do I help you? How do I help you get across the finish line?
Yeah. When I think like one of the terms I guess I've always lived my life by is this kind of lead by example, and you set this pace, you set this tone, you set this example for the people around you. And some of the things I've told our team is like, look, you're leading by example whether you want to or not. Like people are
Yeah,
watching you. People are watching all of your moves and your actions. And I think that's at least what I've witnessed about you is just like you're willing to roll up your sleeves, you're willing to get into a meeting, you're willing to help, and you're not being punitive or trying to take control. You're just in there trying to make it happen, right? And I've just
yeah.
like I've witnessed that with you in our relationship and have seen that. So like it's interesting to kind of hear some of the wiring of how that's come to fruition.
It's really about taking ownership, and helping somebody else take ownership, right? And you don't have to take credit for it, but if you know somebody else is trying to succeed, and you know that you've got ability to help them go do, you know, as a leader, your job is to step in and help them think through it, right? You don't have to go do it, but how do you think through it, and how do my job as the chief operating officer now, and I played this role also as a CEO and as a president, is I've I've got to enable the business to go do what the business needs to go do, and sometimes that means I got to separate some things. I got to move some obstacles out of the way. I've got to enable some things. I've got to authorize investment. I have to maybe bring different people into the discussion. Maybe I have to remove people from the discussion, right? Or coach somebody up in the discussion and say, look, you need to think about how you're approaching this because you're not gathering the intelligence that's in the room. It's kind of your fingerprints on it, and everybody else is just shutting up. Well, you're not benefiting from everybody else that sits in the room.
Right. Right.
So
So what's the hardest thing that you've had to deal with in your career? I mean, kind of coming along and I mean, does something like stick out? You're like, man, that was just like the hardest thing that I had to go through.
probably probably the hardest thing I had to go through was realizing there's points in time when the business needs you to go do something else that you're like, I don't see that, right? I just don't see it. And so fast forward, Balfour Beatty bought Syntex in 2007. At the time, I was the president of the Florida business, and the leadership for the U.S. came to me and said, "Hey, we want you to move to Georgia and be the president of the Georgia business." And I'm like, "Well, how does that make sense, right? I mean, I've got this Florida business is the biggest business in the Balfour Beatty portfolio. It's one of the most profitable. Um, what? Why send me to Georgia, right? Well, you've started some businesses for us. You've done different things. You got the DNA we think, to help launch the Georgia business. So I actually brought them a different deal. I said, look, I'll go to Georgia, but let's talk about what that looks like. And ultimately it aligned with the maturity of the organization structure with Balfour Beatty. So I moved to Georgia, not as president, but as CEO of the Southeast region. But I also played president of the Georgia business. So continue a couple of years into that experience, 2009 when I moved to Atlanta, get to 2013, the business leadership comes back to me and says, hey, we want to pull you out of the CEO role and we want you just to focus on the Georgia business. That was hard for me.
Mm-hmm.
That to me somewhat represented failure. And at the time, Balfour Beatty just went through leadership change, so they had a new CEO in the U.S. I didn't understand it, and I had to do a lot of soul searching. I mean, was I going to stay? Was I going to leave? And ultimately, I'm like, look, you have a choice, right? You could either curse the darkness and leave and say, treated unfairly, or you could stay and serve the business that's in Georgia and just do an incredible job, right? And go do what you do well. So I chose to stay,
Mm-hmm.
and we took that business from, in a couple of years, we took it from, it was like a $75 million a year business up to, I think it was 200 in a couple of years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, things in the economy turned around. This is kind of 2009 timeframe.
Yeah, kind of the backside.
Yeah. So go beyond that, more leadership change in the US, new CEO comes in. This is funny. He comes to me, this is now 2016, comes to me and says, Al, let's have a meeting. I sit down with him and he said, look, man, I never understood why those guys took you out of the CEO role. I want you back in it, and I want you to oversee. Not only Georgia, but I want to put you in place to do what you were doing before. Because I never agreed with what they were doing, but I wasn't in charge then. So ultimately, I got back in my old role, and then ultimately Balfour Beatty and I, we moved to a position of, I got tired of them. They got tired of me. There was a lot of change in Balfour Beatty. Businesses were performing. I mean, it wasn't a performance issue. They
Mm-hmm.
just said, look, it's just not working for us anymore. And I'm like, you know what? I agree. I'm not enjoying it like I used to. It became a very, what I call a McDonald's style of management,
Yep.
which is you put a hamburger patty, 2 pickles, a squirt of mustard, and squirt of ketchup, and you serve a hamburger, right? That's not my style. I'm an entrepreneurial mindset. I, they were pushing things in the business that I didn't agree with, and there's only so much what I would call going to the people that in the business and say, hey, this is really good for us. When quite honestly, I really didn't agree with it.
Yeah.
And you got to do that as a leader, right? You got to put on your leadership face and look, they're steering the ship. They're asking me to go do these things, and you lead the right way. And you talk about earlier about people watching you. So as change goes through the business, I tell people that not only will they be listening to your words, but they're going to be watching your body language.
Yep. Yep.
So if you're up there in front of your team, telling them things are great, but you're looking at your shoelaces and looking at the threads in the carpet, and you're not making eye contact, and you don't have a level of energy around what you're delivering, and you don't espouse belief, the
Pretty obvious.
the audio is not matching the video.
Yeah.
And people see that like that.
Well, I think I think the reality is people are smart, man. I mean, people pick up
Yeah.
on these like innate
Yeah.
human
Cues.
cues, man. They can watch you, they can listen to you, and they know if you're in
Yeah.
or not. And I agree. I think it's one of the hardest things you think about, just like in leadership in our organization, is we talk about how to let's disagree, like in the conference room
Behind closed doors.
right, and it's okay, but like if we agree that as a whether you got your way or not, that we're going to carry this message to the troops, it's our job to go carry the message to the troops,
Yeah.
and any weaknesses in that and can really impact how people perform and put doubt in their minds. And especially in competitive industries, I think about how competitive construction is and the technology space. I mean, you don't want to starting to inject people in doubt in their day to day starts having them doubt their career, and then they're not fully committed. It can just have such a snowball effect.
People, there's a saying that anybody can sail a boat on a calm day.
Yeah.
And it's when you're driving change through the business, and people don't like their cheese being moved, right? They don't like change. Now they like change when they're on the giving side of it, but when they're on the receiving side of it, you have to realize that mentally people go through a cycle. Everybody does. I don't care who you are. You go through a cycle of shock, excitement, doubt, acceptance. Then you're in recovery, and then you're in reality. There is a, I forget what the cycle's called, but there is a cycle out there.
Mm-hmm.
that people go through, and everybody goes through it. And you got to realize that, and you got to manage it.
Yep.
If you think that you're going to go say something one time and it's going to happen, and you're not reading tea leaves and adjusting, you'll wake up to a problem pretty quickly.
So how did you, one of the questions I asked one of our previous guests is, I mean, you've run huge businesses, you run a huge business today. I mean, you've got lots of people that work underneath you and report to you, and you can't have individual one-to-one conversations with everybody in the business at scale to make sure that you've got that, like that pulse of them, and you're answering their questions and concerns. And you talked earlier about like the need to really kind of scale and empower through your leadership. So like what have you found in the size companies that you run is like the best way to deliver that message, to make sure that you're not only getting the message out there, but you're also listening to the team and addressing their concerns and like keeping that dialogue alive? Like what's worked for you in these businesses?
It's not easy, and you have to realize that, and you have to be intentional about it. You have to have a plan. Now, as I said, I'm at the end of my career. I've been doing this a long time. Initially I would kind of write down the things I needed to do, and now it's become muscle memory.
Hmm.
Um, you have to communicate in many different platforms. You have to do it. You have to do it in person. You have to do it by email. You have to go visit job sites. You have to have town hall meetings. We have a thing called Snapcoms that we send out critical messages that it pops up on people's screens, so they know to open it up, because they know it's not, it doesn't get lost in their email box. I mean, technology is an enabler. Obviously, you and I are on a like a Teams call that we can communicate. We do those dial-ins. We check the pulse of the business through best places to work surveys every year. We do an I heard you to the business. This is what we heard. This is what we're going to change. And always, though, people were sitting back saying, okay, they said they're going to do X. I'm going to watch to see what they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they don't have short memories. And being available, right? Not, you know, having an open door policy. A lot of people say they got an open door policy. Well, if you have an open door policy and people walk into your office and all of a sudden there's no engagement, that's not an open. Yeah, your door might be open, but that's not an open door policy. And you need to kind of be okay with making fun of yourself a little bit. I mean, seriously. I mean, just not walk around like you're the CEO or the COO. Hey, what's going on? What's happening? What'd you do this weekend? And have some fun.
Hmm.
And people need to feel comfortable around you, and then the relationship develops, right?
Yep.
And it's hard to have a relationship in a business that's $1 billion a year business. You have 500 employees. When
Yeah.
I
It's,
when
it's,
I
it's hard.
came to Carroll Daniel, we had 135.
Wow.
Yeah.
And and so then what brought you, what got you to Carroll Daniel? And obviously Carroll Daniel, you guys have grown significantly, but like tell me a little bit about Carroll Daniel. Like what got you to go take this journey with Brian and the team, and what's it been like, kind of coming out of this large corporate environment. Obviously you have a big business, but but it's still a family held business. And I mean, what's that transition been like, and what got you to make that switch? And
So when I left Balfour Beatty, that left me, right. This 2017, April 2000. It was a good separation. I mean, we had the discussion in April, and they asked me to stay on through July, right? So I helped them transition and everything else. And look, I had 34 years in that business, and I had a lot of good friends. And I wasn't about to, leave that business in a bad state. But when I left that business, I told Tony, my wife, I said, I'm going to do one of two things. I was 58 or 59 at the time. I said, I'm either going to teach, go somewhere and teach construction classes or leadership classes, or I'm going to go work for a smaller privately held business and help them go do what they want to go do. Prior to me leaving Balfour Beatty, Brian Daniel actually stole a guy from me,
Hmm.
which we internally, it's a big joke. He now runs our Atlanta business. He's actually one of the three. He's one of the three executive vice presidents that are backfilling for me when I leave the business. Great guy. He worked with me at Balfour Beatty, and Brian stole him in 2016. So when he heard I was leaving in 17, he called me up and said, "Hey, what are you doing? I know you're not retiring." And I said, "No, I'm not. I don't know what I'm doing yet." And he said, "Well, would you consider talking to Brian, because he could really use you with what he's trying to do with the business?" So I had lunch with Brian and David. David Stone is the guy's name that worked with me over at Balfour Beatty. And Brian's the perfect example of humility. Third generation family owner. At the time, Brian was 42, so he's 16 or so years my younger. He knew what he knew from being in Carroll Daniel, but he is a study of business. He's a study of leadership. And he said, "Man, I really think you could help me, grow the business, because, you're going to see things that we're not going to see,
Mhm.
right? We'll ultimately get to where we want to go, but man, you're just going to help us not have a train wreck, or hopefully you'll help us not have a train wreck at the time." And he laid out a plan, and I sat back and I said, this would be fun. This could be, um, what do you do, right? What do you do with all this knowledge that you have after 34 years? And at the time, I pretty much did everything I wanted to do in construction other
Yeah.
than own my own business.
Right.
And it's really, somebody told me one time, it's going from success to significance, right? How do you make that transition? And how do you get back? And what do you do? And how do you have fun? So I'm like, yeah, I'd love to come alongside of you and the team, and help, put the bones around growing the business. And when I came in 2018, the business was 135 people, 200 million. They just hit 200, but it had a culture of success, and that's important.
Mm.
And I coined the business very early on, and this wasn't demeaning to the business. It's actually a very strong character trait. And I went to Brian and I said, "Look, I've been here 8 months or so, and let me tell you, this business has more grit than knowledge. And I'll take grit over knowledge any day. Okay. We can teach the knowledge, right? You can't teach grit.
Yeah.
Okay. Grit's a mindset, grit's a culture of success. And we we've been very intentional about our growth. I mean, this isn't haphazard. I mean, we're getting ready to go into a strategic planning. This is our strategic planning year. We When I got here, it was every 2 years. Once we got the framework around the business, it transitioned to every 3 years. But we would update our strategic plan every year. Are we on course?
Hmm.
What do we need to course correct? What do we need? Any investments we need? And we would do that as a leadership team. We'd go off site and we would kind of study where we were, and are we on the trajectory that we planned for? So this is our strategic planning year. And we map out, let's say a 5 year, where we want to be in 5 years, right? Now in construction, if you can see 2 years out, that you're doing
Yeah,
pretty
it's pretty
good.
good.
Three
Yeah.
years out, you're starting to get a little fuzzy,
Right.
right?
Yep. Starting to guess a lot
Five
more.
5 years is aspirational, and what are some of the big investments we may want to make, right? Is there an acquisition out there that, hey, in year 4, we need to think about an acquisition to pivot to our next step, right? And all that. So it's compass heading. It's nothing more than that. It's a spot on a wall that you point to, and the ship is pointed in that direction. But every year we've done that. And we've been very nimble in what we do, and we course correct very quickly. And we've been blessed by an incredible economy, and we've investments in the markets that for us have done incredibly well.
Mm-hmm.
So last year, which will be, I'm in my 8th year. So last year, we as a company um, achieved $908 million of revenue.
Yeah.
And earnings return on that revenue higher than it's ever been.
That's incredible. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. So
4X, right?
yeah. Well, it's almost, it'll be 5X this year.
Yeah.
So, somebody told me one day, he said, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Unfortunately, the construction business, how big are you? Oh, I'm $1 billion. Well, that's great, but how much are you keeping?
Yeah. What'd you make? Yeah.
Yeah, what'd you make, right? And public companies have to disclose it, private companies don't. And so that's we're focused on the bottom line, and those are incremental improvements that we do, and that's why we've introduced some things into the business that helps us satisfy the needs of our clients and helps us perform. And if we do them well, they could have upside opportunity,
Yeah.
but you got to manage the risk the right way.
Yeah. So, I mean, thinking about 4Xing a business, especially of that size, I mean, when you go from 10 to 20 million to, 80 million versus you go from a couple hundred million to almost $1 billion, and that's a significant,
Yeah.
that's a significant growth. And I mean, do you think that, kind of going back to it, do you think, I'm sure there's a lot of things in leadership style and bringing the right people together. You had this like foundation of grit. So you just had people that were just willing to work. You talked about like having this kind of 5-year, compass heading, but really this like 2 to 3 year plan. Like what do you think kind of top, 1 or 2, 3 things that have, like, you go back over the last 8 years, like, what really led to our ability to achieve where we are today are these couple things. And I know there's a lot, right? So it's easy to kind of dive into, like, but if you kind of go back, is it having the plan and having the vision? Is it having that right foundation? Is it just assembling the right people? Like what do you think you attribute the most success to, the most impact from?
Yeah. I would put at the top of that Brian Daniel. Brian's a visionary leader. He is a humble person, and he provided a tool, whatever tools, when I call tools, it's not physical tools, right? Whatever things. The Treble Hook is an example. Chris, you're a living example of things that Brian. I would bring to Brian, and he would say, "Yeah, let's go make the investment," right? And so first, you have to have the right leader. Okay, that's primary. Then after that, you have to have aligned leadership below that from a DNA standpoint operates somewhat in the same sphere. What I mean by that is they're not cookie cutter leaders, but they're extremely competitive, and they hate losing more than they like winning.
Yeah.
And they're willing, which is a big part, they're willing to change to get there. Even if the change is painful to go do, and it's hard, it's like rolling a boulder uphill. They know that when I get this boulder to the top, pushing it over the hill and seeing it go down is going to be really easy.
Yeah.
And because we had to build out this business significantly to perform at the levels that we're performing at today. And it's a team effort, right? I may have the knowledge to go do it, but it's not a one-man show. I mean, we had to change our financial accounting. We had to change our HR department. We had to change our IT. When I say change, I'm talking about mature it,
Yeah. Just
make it more sophisticated.
yeah. Cause you're right. I mean, at a $1 billion year company is executing the business a lot different than $100 to $200 million a year. I mean, it's just fundamentally a different foundation you need.
We're burning in 1 month what we would do in a year.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point in time, because the business when I got here just hit 200. And that's why, for me, Trouble Hook is so valuable because, you know, I tell our team that, you know, we outrun our headlights, you know, because your headlights are only shining so far. And if you don't have good visibility in your pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
you chew. Right now, we're chewing $90 million a month, right? It doesn't. If we're not winning a $90 million job every month, we're going out of business,
Right. Right.
right? And there's it's a competitive world,
Well, I'm sure,
and it's hard to go do.
and I imagine just having, when you think about this 2 to 3 year plan and continued growth, I mean, just making sure that you've got, that foundation. And we always talk about, like, if you have cracks in the foundation today, as that foundation grows, those cracks only get bigger. So, now is the time to attack them. But then also just making sure that you know where you're heading, right? You've got a good, clear vision and a team that's aligned. So,
I mean, we've had unrealistic growth. I mean, we've said in some years we've increased the business by 50%, right? That makes your knees wobble.
yeah,
I don't care who you are. And I would tell you, it's harder to take a business from 200 to a billion than it is from a billion to a billion and a half or 3 billion. Because I've seen it, right? I've seen businesses when I was at Balfour Beatty. I saw that business grow, and it's harder to do what we've done. I mean, we're at a place now where we've got significant scale. We've got 6 offices. We've got 8 business units. We've got a design company now, and we've supplemented that with some self-perform services that helps us deliver the things that our clients want. So
but that
we,
complexity, I can imagine that complexity, going from 200 to 100 million, and how like the types of businesses that you can get to that point in a regional footprint versus to get to 3 billion, you have to probably start looking much farther outward, continued more diversity.
yeah. So we are, we're not pushing top line growth,
Yeah.
right? If it happens, it happens. We want to perfect bottom line growth. And so, when you think about growth, growth comes in a lot of different ways. Growth comes in, can you grow your capabilities? Can you perfect your capabilities on how well you do things? That's growth. Obviously, bottom line growth. How do you become more efficient through technology? And those don't happen by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Those are initiatives. And to run that concurrent with top line growth and people growth is difficult. So we're not forecasting the pace of growth that we have, because that could just blow up a business.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to be smart about what we do. We want to be seen as the client, the contractors that clients point to when they're talking to other contractors and say, we want you to do it like Carroll Daniel does it. We want to be the example that clients point to.
Yep.
And I would tell you that 40% of that's technical and 60% of that's behavioral,
Yep.
because you can build a business and you can leave blood along the highway getting there, or you can build a business and a job, and the client's like, that's probably one of the most enjoyable experiences I've ever had.
Right. Right. Well, the
And
reality
that's
is,
what we're focused on. We're focused on what does the client feel, and the subcontractors and architects and designers, what's their experience with Carroll Daniel?
well, the reality is, I mean, it's such, I think AEC just in general, I mean, coming out of it in the past, it's such a relational business, and
Yeah.
it's hard. And, you've had like this amazing career, and, you want to enjoy what you do every day. You want to go to work, and you want to work with people and peers and
Yeah.
subcontractors and vendors and folks that you just really enjoy being around. And it's amazing, like when you taste an experience, whether it's an internal, external relationship, and you're like, man, that felt so good. And then on the flip side, you work with a team or a group
Yeah.
that doesn't. You're like, man, if I
Yeah.
could just do more of that, not only is it a better experience for them and for us, but I'm happier. I tend to do a better job. Like it enables me to grow that relationship at a deeper level. And I just think, like, us as humans, man, like we are we're just wired to connect with one another, right? We're wired to, and no matter
Yeah.
what technology is out there in the marketplace, we're wired to want to
Yeah.
connect. And so you want to connect and be around people that build you up and grow you.
Yeah.
And it just sounds like, just in general, like that's what you all are trying to be. You're trying to be that example of an organization that really just wants to be sought after, and not because you build the biggest buildings or have the highest revenue, whatever, but just that they enjoy the experience of working with you. And then along the way, if you all can be, wildly profitable and reward all the people for their hard work, you've got this like beautiful blend of a business.
Yeah. We've developed a incredible training academy. And as you look at the curriculum, it follows our discussion to the T. Project engineers typically get more technical training, shop drawings, quality control, safety, site logistics, scheduling, and things like that. With really, how do you manage yourself? Because at the time they're managing themselves, right? Then you move into management, and it becomes, you still have some technical things around managing risk, writing subcontracts, and insurance products, things like that. But then it becomes, how do you manage teams, right? What does that look like? How do you have a difficult conversation? How do you mentor people? Then you move up your career, and it becomes, how do you develop high performing teams, right? And how do you excel at that? So we've set up a training program that does all that. 101, 201, 301 for both field operations and office operations.
Mm-hmm.
And then ultimately we have an emerging leader program. We have a management and executive program, and we have a senior leader program. And we get to a point where you get in those leadership programs, and we're tapping the industry more from a consultant standpoint, because it gets beyond our bandwidth
Yeah. Right.
to talk about the psychology and what's your personality style, and how does the strength become a weakness when even it's a strength that gets overused, and what does that mean? And we start introducing more complex thinking around people management to try to help our people be the best they can be on the behavioral side.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Just kind of pivoting, because I know we're kind of wrapping up on time. A couple questions, that I have for you. I mean, you mentioned it a couple times that in the next, this year might be kind of looking
Mhm.
to retire, and I'm just kind of curious, like when you think about retirement, and I don't think you're going to go just sit and play golf all the time. I still think you're going to have to do something,
I
but
hate golf.
you can go build race cars, man. You know what I mean? Like figure something. I know you'll do something, but like when you think back, and I mean, obviously Carroll Daniel will be where you've spent almost a decade. You had this amazing career kind of coming up through these large, really well-known organizations. Like when you look back on your just general career, and you mentioned the word legacy a bit before, and so I want to just kind of lean in on that and just ask you, like, when you think about the legacy that you've left of all of these various roles that you've held in these different businesses and these really large businesses, and help them scale and help them grow, like what do you hope that people say about you? What legacy do you hope that you've left along the way?
I would say that he made me better, or helped me be better. I can't make anybody do anything, but he helped me be better at what I do. Always had fun. Never thought of his role as superior to anybody else. And when I was around him, I enjoyed my time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And what would be, if you had to kind of sum up, like if somebody came to you at your retirement party and like, all right, Al, you got one word, man. You think about one word that like describes Al. Like what is it that you think? And it could be personal, professional, whatever. Like what's one word you think that describes you?
I haven't thought about one word. I would say humble.
Humble. Yeah.
I
I,
would say humble.
is actually, I was listening to some of your stories, and when you reflected back on one of the hardest things that you had to go through, you were talking about this transition in role and from CEO to COO, and your intentional decision, quite honestly, of how to attack that transition. And the reality is that transition probably led to great things for you, as did when Brian stole one of the guys from you. Like, had Brian not have stole him, you wouldn't be sitting here likely with me today. And it's amazing how those opportunities can actually turn into really good things. But like, that was the sense that I've got from you. And it's so cool to talk to you today and kind of listen to the way that you process these thoughts and like the way that your career, because like I told you, man, like that's the way that I've experienced you in whether it be meetings or relationship or whatever, is just that, the way that you lead is just like, you just exude this energy and this excitement, this humble nature. There's no ego. You're out there, you're a heavy communicator, you're willing to roll up your sleeves. And what's cool is you just watch your team and you watch people just innately follow you. And it's not because you're telling them to follow you. You're just setting this example, man. You're this like shining light on the hill. And it's been so cool to get to know you, man. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking some time today and just sitting down and chatting with me.
Yeah.
And
like I said, I couldn't have scripted it any better.
Yeah.
I really couldn't. I mean, I tell my wife this all the time. I tell Brian, I said, I'm so thankful for the opportunity, and it's been a blast. I mean, it's just incredible. It really has been fun.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go away. I'm not going to go out and kind of get blown off in the dust. I'm going to, the business wants me to stay somewhat engaged. The challenge is, how do you do that without being disruptive?
Right.
How do you add value?
Be additive to the business, and
you got to add value. I mean, at the end, you can't come in and create this tidal wave and leave.
Yeah.
So we're figuring that out. We're working with our executive team to see what that looks like, and it's got to be two ways, because obviously I want to move on to my next chapter in life.
Right.
I've got 5 grandkids and 4 kids, and they're spread throughout the Southeast. So I got to make time to go see them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. Wow. Yeah. I can't tell you today, man, like thinking about when we talk about why I named the show Built with Purpose, and you are like exactly the type of individual that I wanted to have out here. And, hopefully the listeners enjoyed today, man. And
the other interviews you've done.
Yeah, man, I
enjoy these.
Can't tell you how much I appreciate you, brothers. Thanks for joining today.
Hey, man, appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for joining me on Built with Purpose. If you have enjoyed today's episode, subscribe, share, and leave us a review. It helps more bold leaders find the show. For resources and show notes, visit our website and connect with me, Chris Fay, on LinkedIn. Until next time, keep building great companies, cultures, and legacies with purpose.